All right, Jarom, brother, thank you for joining me, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing incredible,
Well, you're
Alexander. Thank you.
you're out in Arizona, so I
Yep.
assume that it's at least warm.
You know what it is? It's 106 degrees outside right now, which is perfect. I mean,
That's
that's
that's the weather you're looking for to go play pickleball
oh
in.
yeah, it's great. If you've got a swimming pool, it's like a vacation every day. So it's great.
Well, Jarom, how about you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you've been up to over the last handful of years? We'll go back, we'll get to the beginning, but just maybe give us the quick bio about what you're up to out there in Arizona.
Yeah, absolutely. A little bit about myself. I am married to my high school sweetheart, and I've got 4 kids, ages 9, 7, 4, and 1. And they are so much fun. They're a lot of work, but so much fun. And I own and operate a real estate team with my partner here in Phoenix and in a couple of submarkets in Arizona, like Northern Arizona, Show Low, Pine Top, Lakeside, and Southern Arizona, like Tucson.
Mhm.
So we're kind of scattered throughout the state here. Own and operate a construction company, a hearing aid company, and we flip homes. We have a franchise called We Buy Ugly Houses. It's a nationwide franchise
Interesting. Okay.
that we have here in Phoenix. So that's what keeps me busy most of the day. Are those things there? But I love what I do. I've been in the real estate space since 2010, and never looked back. I've had a corporate job sprinkled in there, and I ran as fast as I could. It was incredible. The job and the people I worked with were great, but I'm just an entrepreneur at heart, and I'm just not okay with a paycheck every 2 weeks. And I'm just not okay with not having control of the number that's on that paycheck.
Hmm. All of those different businesses track really easily except the hearing aid one. We'll get into that in a little
Sure.
bit. Take me back to the beginning, man. How did you first understand that you wanted to be in the business world?
Um, it kind of just fell into my lap. I knew that I wanted to be in real estate from a friend of mine. His name is Zach Allen. He was a youth leader of mine growing up, and he was just a huge example to me. He had what I wanted, and I said, I want that. I want the incredible wife, which I have, the incredible kids. I want the flexibility of what your job offers you. And so I pursued down that path in 2010. Straight out of high school, I went to go. I lived in Argentina for a couple of years to serve a mission for my church.
Mm,
Um, and then when I got back after 2 years from my mission, is when I dove into property management and was doing that for 5 or 6 years, and it was great. Uh, but realized that it's a battle. The landlords hate you, the tenants hate you,
mm,
and the pay is not great. And the only way
mm,
that you're getting ahead is by slinging some deals on the side and handyman work. And so that's what I
mm,
did to kind of carry my way through and I guess make a decent income.
mm.
Um,
As far as property management goes, how are people making it work? Is it just scale? You just need like a ton.
Scale.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you don't have hundreds of doors, uh, you're not surviving, because especially now with so much competition. I mean, these people are charging like $50 a door, and that's
Mm,
not sustainable. You can't operate on low margins like that unless you're making money on a bunch of fees like lease up fees, eviction fees. Um, I mean, there's a million ways you can make a fee in property management, but then you're a slumlord, right? Your owners hate you. So to do
mm.
it right, you have to charge a healthy margin. And there's just big companies out there who are cutting margins, who are taking business.
Well, I think that's probably an important lesson right there for anybody listening. I had to find this out in the construction world, mostly doing residential roofing. There was always someone who would be willing to go lower price than us.
Yeah.
There was almost no barrier to entry for the industry, right? So I'm
Yeah.
sure you found this out in property management if you wanted to make that like your thing. I'm sure for you it was just an entry point. But if you were gonna make it your thing, you had to understand that everyone out there was thinking, I can become a property manager. Well, what are the licensures? You don't need one. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, amazing. I just start it today. And then it's Jerome's, property management group. And here we are. And that's really difficult because then anyone can fire one up. And to your point, they might do $50 a door and be willing to lose money or not even be smart enough to realize that they're losing money. And you're just sort of racing to the bottom, but there's no profit to be made when you do it that way.
Yep. Yep. And a lot of those big companies too, they make money off of their ancillary pieces like a lease up fee. So they make their money because they've got bulk. They don't need the property management fee. They've got their other fees that they're charging. So in order to make it work, it's just tough. It's a tough business to be in. And so I'm glad I got out of that. But just like you said, the barriers to entry is a real estate license.
Mm,
And
I
and
didn't
it's
even know
not,
you needed that for property management.
yeah, and it's not that hard to get. So they're
Well,
pretty low.
in the state of Ohio, that's more licensures that you needed to be a general contractor in the roofing world. Like you didn't need any license, and you didn't even really need to pull permits generally because you were at the exterior of the house.
Oh, interesting.
It was like this crazy thing where there was legitimately like a pipeline of like ex drug addicts and convicts who like got into the roofing sales world. Like I don't know how it happened, but it was madness. And it is a good industry, but I hate regulation, but it's almost like an industry that needs like regulation to get some of those people out
Yeah,
because there's no money to be made and the quality just deteriorates and you can't really protect the homeowners in many
yeah.
ways, shapes, and forms.
Are you still in that space?
No, so I sold my general construction company, I think in 2020, if I'm remembering correctly.
Okay.
So I was kind of concurrently running this company, Mixed Solutions, and that company. I definitely want to talk to you about running multiple companies at once because, and not to say it didn't work for me, but it was crazy difficult.
Yeah,
And I personally would not recommend it to young people. Maybe if you're a little more established and have a little more capital, we were just like broke and dumb and young on both fronts.
yeah.
So it's tough to do it, but I got out of that field and pursued this opportunity, which was a lot better in general for us.
Awesome.
Yeah. So after property management, you're like, this is crazy. How do I take the next step to move up in this game?
Yeah, I realized that there was only so far I could go in the property management world, and so I bounced and took my dream job. So I was going to ASU all throughout this time to get my degree in finance.
Mm.
So I graduated from Arizona State University during my property management years, and when I graduated, I took my dream job and did commercial real estate development, which was
Mm.
it was incredible. I mean, you got to learn the ins and outs of everything. Taking a piece of raw dirt, doing the entitlements, and making raw dirt worth something extremely valuable
Mm.
was a lot of fun. And so we would take raw dirt and develop it. And I mean, we would attract major tenants like Dutch Brothers or Panda Express or Walmart,
Mm.
Burger King. We worked with so many different tenants in that space. It was mainly retail, commercial, um, but it was just incredible. It was awesome. I loved every minute of it, and I thought I'd be there forever.
Mm.
And then realizing that again, I get paid every 2 weeks, and I don't control the number on that paycheck. I had to bow out,
Mm.
and I start my own thing, and that's what I did. I went back to what I knew, and that was buying and selling homes,
Mm.
and just put my head down and grinded. That's all I did. Um, that was probably the roughest time in my relationship with my wife because I didn't give her any attention at all. All I cared about was, keeping a roof over her head and food in her mouth and my kids. That's all that mattered to me.
Mm.
And I definitely worked harder than I should have at that time. And I could have balanced that a whole lot better, but I didn't. But we learned from it. And, now fast forward 7 years later, here we are, it looks completely different. And we've just built little by little, brick by brick, and here we are.
So when you are thinking about leaving that job, how do you go about finding that first property? But also, are you thinking, okay, I need to like get this thing actually rolling? Because so many people I've seen, they'll just like quit the good job and then be like, the new business isn't quite rolling yet. Like, ooh, this is maybe I should have waited a couple of months to get it.
Yep. Yep. I cut the ropes. I cut any and all ties that I had to safety.
Burn the
It was
bridges, baby.
I burned them, and I made sure they were burnt. And so I literally put myself in a position to where I either float or I sink. And it's
Mhm.
because I know my personality, and I know that if I'm given an opportunity to where I have to float or sink, I know I'll always float based off of just past experiences I've had
Mm.
and life experiences. And so I burnt the bridges, had a little bit of money in savings to float us because I knew it was going to take some time to build my pipeline. And I mean, gosh, 6 months in, it was it was great. I was making more money in a month than I ever made in a
Mm.
year.
Okay, how are you making that? Like, are you buying deals and pushing them to other people? You actually buying the houses, fixing them up? What's this look like?
Yep, great question. So the buying and flipping came years after I jumped into buying
I
and selling
I
homes full
figured
time.
because I know that's a very cost-intensive process.
Yep. So I jumped straight into transactions representing buyers and sellers.
I gotcha.
And my partner had an incredible relationship with lead sources like Zillow. So
Mm,
we are the number one team in Phoenix for Zillow.
got it.
And that started as a baby for us 8 years ago, and it's grown into, and they're $1 billion company, Zillow, nationwide, worldwide, and we get to represent them here in Phoenix, which is really cool. There's a few others agents that rep them as well, but we're the number one team here in Phoenix. So it was great lead sources like Zillow and Google leads. Online leads is what we mastered,
Mm.
and
Was this at a
we
time when other real estate agents didn't quite have it figured out?
nope. And what's funny is the other agents would say that Zillow's a beast. Like don't feed the monster. And we're like, Zillow's getting us in front of prospective buyers and sellers. Like like a business decision, it'd be crazy for us not to take this opportunity and develop that relationship with Zillow, which we've done and have done and will continue to do. They're not perfect. I can sit here and complain all day, but at the end of the day, they get us in front of buyers and sellers that turn into relationships, and those relationships turns into referrals, and those referrals turn into referrals, and it's just a tree that just grows, and it never stops growing as long as you feed your tree.
It's
Um,
funny you say that because it's probably honestly a similar time too, but that's exactly what happened at our business. People were not wanting to sell their products on Amazon. They're like, "Amazon, that's like low rent, low quality. That's the equivalent of selling my product in Walmart. Like,
yeah,
we don't wanna be on there. You shouldn't even sell on there," like, telling us, like, "No, don't sell on there." Like, people are selling on there, but they're making pennies, you don't wanna do that. And we just kinda went like, "Ah, well, I don't know. Let's just figure it out for ourselves." So we started selling on Amazon in late 2014, early 2015. So this was probably a very similar timeline and probably a very similar process where people are telling you, "Don't no, Zillow bad, Zillow bad,
exactly. Yep.
Amazon bad." And you and me were just dumb enough to go like, "All right, well, we'll just try for ourselves. We'll see if that's right or not." And
Yeah.
I honestly attribute a lot of our success to just being so stubborn that you're like, "Well, I'll just try for myself and see if that's right."
Yep. And that's our problem, Alexander. As entrepreneurs, we're too stupid to quit. We really are, and we just keep trying it over and over again until it works. I mean, that literally is almost identical to what we had experienced.
You talk about being too dumb to quit or too dumb not to know that you shouldn't start. When I
Yeah,
started
that
the
too.
company, I had a friend and I, like, looked up to him. He was a couple years older than me, and when I was graduating at, like, 21, 22 from college, he was, like, 24, 25, and I thought that he had all this money. Looking back now, I have no idea. Like, he might have been making, like, 50 grand a year, but it felt
Yeah,
like, all this money. And
yeah,
he was like, "Yeah, okay, you're gonna start something in the supplement sports nutrition world." He just kinda paused and he goes, "It's just a really competitive field." And that, like, really hit me because what I interpreted he was saying was, like, "Don't do that. That's maybe not, like, a great idea or a great industry." But we just went out and we tried it. We tried it for ourselves, and it's hard for me to give that as blanket advice, just like don't listen to other people,
Yep.
especially if you have really smart people around you who are like telling you like, no, don't do this, don't do this. But at the same time, there is that other end of the spectrum where, hey, if everyone thinks that this is the right thing to do, maybe I should try doing the opposite thing. Because recently I just heard, and this makes total sense, that if you want to become a billionaire, you can't just follow the crowd. You
Yeah.
have to be a contrarian. Now, to become a
Yeah.
millionaire, you can follow the crowd. As
Yep.
Charlie Munger would say, you can be the best plumber in Bemidji, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but if you want to become a billionaire, you can't just like be the best plumber because that path is too linear. You have to
Mhm.
actually go the opposite direction. And I
Yeah.
don't compare myself to those folks, but I think there's something there, understanding when to follow the crowd and understanding when you need to go the opposite direction.
Absolutely. I think you said it best. I mean, millionaire, it's not hard to make $1 million, at least in my industry. There's hundreds of millions of people doing it. It's not hard. It's the billion, but you got to be different. I mean, you said it perfectly.
Yeah. I think that people might hear you say $1 million is not hard to make, but I'm with you. It starts with picking the right industry, place, and time.
Yep.
If you do those things, and I say this often to people when I give advice to young people, they go like, "Well, give me some advice," and I just go, "Well, pick the right industry."
Yeah.
I just heard Scott Galloway say this, and I was like, "Wow, that's really insightful." He said, "Pick an industry where you can be in the top 10% of the best of people, and they have a 90% employment rate." He's like, "You're in the top 10% in basketball players." He's like, "Great, you didn't make your JV team." And he's like, "But if you're in the top 10% of like CPAs," he's like, "those guys like fly private, you know?
Yeah.
They're
Oh, yeah.
they're, like, really successful and they're all employed." He used the example of, like, the Screen Actors Guild, where there's some huge number of people in the Screen Actors Guild, a couple 100,000, and he said that something along the lines of 85% of people don't qualify for health insurance because they don't make $23,000 a year in that industry. So, like, yeah, Brad Pitt makes $30 million every movie, but the odds of you getting to that are pretty low. So he
Yeah.
said you need to see some really bright green lights to say, like, "Yes, I can become an actor. Yes, I can
Yeah.
in this field." If not, pick an industry that has a high saturation of employment where you can get into the top 10%. I thought that was fantastic advice.
Yeah. That is good advice.
Basically, I would guess if you're in the top 10% of real estate agents, you're maybe not a millionaire, but like you could easily become one.
Yeah, I mean, you're probably, depending on how you operate your business, because gosh, I see people spend so much money on stupid stuff. And that's one thing that our industry is known for. Like, you get in front of a realtor, they're buying. Like, they just throw money at anything that walks. But if you operate your business like a business,
Mm,
if you're top 10%, you're making $1 million, no problem.
mm,
But like you had said, it's funny you said plumber. I've told many people, I really don't care what I'm doing. I'll clean toilets. I don't care, because what matters to me is to have that freedom, not flexibility, the freedom to do what I want when I want, and no cap on how much money I can make. I don't care what I'm doing. That's the entrepreneur in me. It just happens to be that I sell houses, but it could be a million other things, and I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, and I saw this firsthand when I was working in the construction industry, that the guys who were doing the construction, they were working, I'm doing air quotes, they were working much harder than me. Like if you've ever yeah, I'm sure you've seen people do roofs, and Phoenix is
Oh
just a whole
yeah. Oh
world,
my
like
gosh. Oh
forget
yeah.
that. But just in Columbus, Ohio, on a hot 90-degree day, like you're up on top of an asphalt roof, you're tearing
Mhm.
like 40 to 50,000 pounds of tar and asphalt off the roof, and then replacing it with another 40, 50,000 pounds. It's like super strenuous work. These guys were working way harder than me.
Yeah.
I was earning more on the job that I sold. And you kind of just have to say to yourself, like, okay, well, what does that mean? And I think it's right behind me on this Tweet Storm by Naval Ravikant, one of my favorite entrepreneurs. And he says, work as hard as you can, but who you're working with and what you're working on is far more important. And I think
Agreed.
that's always something you got to consider. Like, okay, well, what am I working on? Is it actually something that can help me get to my end financial goals.
Yeah. Yeah, like, it's it's the roof. I can't remember who it was. You make $1 million, but the course of you making that $1 million, it's what the work turned made you become as a person to make
Mm,
that $1 million.
mm.
And that's kind of along the same lines as what you're saying. I mean, yeah, I completely agree with you.
So you get back into, selling,
Yeah.
and your wife and you are not talking or on great terms because 'cause you're just out there just hammering the pavement. Uh,
Yep.
where does life kinda go from there? As you stated, you're starting to make far more money than you made in your commercial real estate W
Yep.
job.
Much more. It led me to create some flexibility and freedom. I should say freedom. And so, once I was able to, and me and my wife, she's incredible. I'm not trying to bad talk. She's the most incredible woman in the world, and she was ultra patient with me through all of this. But we started making some money, and life just got a little bit easier. And
Mm,
then the next month, it got a little bit easier and a little bit easier. And that's when we decided, like, you know what, let's start investing in some properties.
mm.
Invested in some properties, and then let's start flipping some homes.
So
And
first thing was buy and hold?
well, I wish. Sorry, I put the cart before the horse. It was actually flipping. And that
You
was one of
you
the
went
biggest
for it, nice.
that was one of the biggest mistakes I've made, was not buying and holding.
Mm,
I wanted the juice now.
yep.
I didn't want to buy and hold and wait. And had we bought and held one property a year, um, God, I wouldn't be in a financial distressed situation like the 2022 dip created for us.
Mm.
So that was number one mistake, was not buying and holding.
So maybe just while we're on that topic, how do you think about those 2 different investment strategies when it comes to real estate? Like buy and hold versus fix and flip. Is there a time and place for both? Should you tell people just stick to one?
Yeah,
Kinda counsel me on that.
that's a good question. In 2020, home prices in Phoenix dropped 15% overnight. And so we were sitting on 18 properties, and we lost 15% of our overall value overnight on 18 homes. We lost millions of dollars
Right.
when the Feds shot the rates up overnight.
Because people just couldn't purchase and afford those homes the way that they had previously.
Yep. Yep. So prices dipped. That was a horrible time to flip, because if you bought a home in that time, you got to buy it deep enough to where you can afford a 15% haircut
Right.
on your exit strategy. No one's buying that deep, can afford to buy that deep.
Mhm.
Um, so in my opinion, buying and holding, no matter what the market is doing, is always a smart strategy. I would always recommend to buy and hold. I don't care if it's a bear, bull, buy and hold. And if it's a one a year, one every, I don't care whatever your time frame is, but that needs to be a strategy always. If you're looking to expand or become a real estate entrepreneur, you're always buying and holding. You have to.
Well, yeah, I mean, again, I'll go back to Benjamin Graham, Warren Buffett, and Charlie Munger. They say that the market can be either stocks or the real estate sector. In the short term is a voting machine, but in the long term, it's a weighing machine, right? So in the long term, home prices will rise over the course of 12, 18, 24 months. You and I, there's no way that we can really realistically predict what's going to happen, especially when the Fed gets involved. If
Yeah.
it was out of it, maybe that would be an easier story. But without that knowledge, we can't necessarily know. So I can promise you that that house will probably be worth more in 30 years. I can't always promise, but I can make a very strong assumption it'll be worth more in 30
Yeah.
years. But in 12 months, you don't necessarily know that.
No. And you can't, I mean, average inflation rate, or here in at Phoenix anyways, is like 4, maybe 5%. So you got to generate income in the meantime. You can't
Right.
just buy and hold, and long-term rents aren't paying the mortgage. So
Mm,
you're coming to the table every month if you're going to long-term rent it. We do what's called pad split on our buy and holds, which I can get into later. Um, that actually generates income each month. But in order to make ends meet and keep the lights on, you have to flip for income. And
Interesting.
so, as long as you can turn a property quick, uh, you'll be fine. As long as you can put out a good product and it doesn't take you 6 months to flip it, and you've got massive overhead costs like hard money rates and fees, which we have. Um, you can do okay, but do not bite off more than you can chew on flips, because it
Mm.
will it'll bite you.
And is that kind of where you feel like you went wrong? I know we're skipping forward a little bit to 2020 because there's, I'm sure, some meat left in the story there in the in between time. But did you just have too many projects going at once that you were banking on all working?
We had too many projects going on at once, and we were following the trajectory of what we had seen in the past.
I see.
And so, had things kept going normal, I mean, it would have been we would have made millions of dollars that year.
Jarom is
That's
smiling. He's got a smirk right here on his face, just thinking about all that he
Yeah, we
didn't
would have made
unfortunately get.
millions that year had things been on that path for another 12 months. But the market decided it was, we're done. Where the Feds is like, nope, heyday's over. We're raising rates, and the market reacted,
Mm,
and not to our benefit.
mm.
But that was the hardest time in my life. But I've learned the most valuable lessons from that experience.
What do you feel like you've taken away from that?
I've been able to understand what my real priorities are.
Okay.
And for me, it's different for everybody, but for me, it's 100% my wife and my kids. I could live in a cardboard box. I don't care. As long as my kids and my wife are happy and our family unit's good, I'm good. The
Mm,
problem with that is I'm always trying to climb up that ladder because of my personality. So that could never be. I would never be okay with just a cardboard box.
mm,
But it at least opened my eyes to what, in my opinion, for me, what was the most important, and it's family. And so I can always make $1 tomorrow, but I don't always have the opportunity to go to my kid's baseball game
right.
when he's 5. And so I missed those. I missed
Mm,
those days. I missed dance recitals. I missed soccer games. I missed a lot because all I had on were my blinders and I was working.
mm,
So the dip in the market in 2022 helped me realize that the dollar will be there tomorrow. I just need to figure out my time with my family and prioritize that, and then focus on work.
mm. Yeah, before we got on, you said balance doesn't exist. You said you can have leverage, but balance is difficult to find.
Yeah, that's my personal opinion. That's Jarom Rogers' doctrine. Someone else could disagree, and if that's the case, I want to talk to you. But I have yet to find balance, leverage, but I have not found a healthy balance.
Well, I think it's always really easy for the people who've sort of like made it to say, yeah, it's not worth it to work 14 hours a day. Like that's
Yeah,
crazy going to the garage sale and getting that stuff to flip. And it's like, well, yeah, you're 15 years from having to do that. So it's a lot easier for you to say that you don't have to like grind 24/7
yeah,
to get the job done when you've already gotten out of that mentality. Like I'm probably like you. At one point, I was working 4 jobs. I was working at Best Buy, I was refereeing soccer, I was doing construction sales, and I was trying to build this company. And
yeah.
I was living at my parents'
Awesome.
house, like, and I look back and I'm like, "How in the hell did I do that?" Like, that was crazy. Now I, like, work 8 hours and work out, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I need to take a hot bath," you know? But, you just didn't think anything of it. You're just like, "Well, this is what I have to do."
Yeah,
That's youth a little bit, but at the same
yeah,
time, you just knew that if you wanted to get to where you were going, you didn't have a ton of experience, so the only thing you could do to make up for it was just keep
yeah.
working hard, and
That's it. Yeah, I didn't understand what leverage was. I didn't understand how to leverage myself. I firmly believe that I do positive affirmations pretty much every day. Some people think that's quirky and kooky. It works for me. But when I'm telling myself these positive affirmations, I'm not that person I want to be yet. But through those positive affirmations, I'm convincing myself that that's who I am. And in order to be that person, I have to live my life a certain way.
Mm,
And so I feel like those positive affirmations actually change my behavior more than
mm,
anything else to help get me to where I want to go. But going back to your multiple jobs, um, I can't say that I've successfully managed all these businesses that I'm a part of. Our flip company, we lost millions of dollars. Our real estate team, our production dropped, our units sold dropped big time. Our construction company, I mean, it suffered. We lost a lot of people, and it's if you don't have good subs or good in-house people, you're not turning a profit.
mhm.
Hearing aids, here in Phoenix, that's seasonal. It's the winter time
Interesting.
when we're selling to the snowbirds, and so
Oh.
it, I I re, a part of me regrets jumping into so many businesses because I can only focus on one. And when I take my focus off of the one that I take my focus off of, you lose. And that's one thing that I've experienced. Unless you have somebody running that, um, there's no way you're able to manage multiple unless you've got like COOs, top of the line CEOs helping it grow, and you're just like the visionary, helping bring things from the clouds down to the ground. But those COOs are expensive, and most of us don't have 250K a year to pay a COO to run a construction company or hearing aid company or whatever else.
Yeah, we talked about earlier the stupidity that we think we can just do these things that other people are like, no, 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 that's going to be really difficult to do. I think that's probably you and I. We have the same genetic lineage that we think
Yeah,
like, well, I can just start another business. Yeah,
yeah,
like I run this business. I can start another business, and you
yeah,
don't realize like that's extremely hard to do. Like, sure, we look at like Elon and we think like, well, Elon's doing it, and that guy's got like monumental resources. He's got like $10 billion of investment into SpaceX. So it's like, yeah, he can hire some good people. I love this quote from Alex Hormozy. It's arrogant to think you can do multiple things at once and beat someone who does one thing with all their effort. Pick one thing, go all in. Then you become the one who's hard to beat.
yeah. He's true. I mean, that nails it. That's it. That's the advice I'd give, and it sounds like that's the same advice you'd give too.
That is the advice that I would give myself.
Yeah,
It's okay to have like side projects that you're kind of like testing. Like maybe
mm-hmm.
this thing will work. Let me see
Yep,
if it'll work. But don't give something 20%, something 30%, something 10%, something 30 more percent. Like it's just not going to work out the way that you hope that it will. And if you're going to do that for a short period of time and then be like, okay, this one, have to pick this one and I have to go.
yep. Agreed. And if you're jumping out, you got to have someone that jumps in that is in.
Yeah.
And that's what happened with our construction company. The person that we had take it over, he was in, he wasn't in,
Mm,
and so it didn't do well because he wasn't bought in. So if you've got the right people like Elon Musk and you can afford to pay the right people, absolutely, sure, go for it. But that most of us don't have those resources. Focus on the one thing and grow it and be the best at it.
Well, the other thing is that maybe you've had this experience. I think I saw that you have 90 people in your real estate agency business,
Yeah.
but we all have this idea that we're going to be really good at hiring and judging character. And I have disavowed myself from that idea because I've
Mhm.
hired so many people. They leave the interview and I'm like, wow, that was a really good kid. Like he's gonna be so good at this role. Like he's just ready to work. He's ready to come in. He's ready to do the thing. He's just, yeah, sure. I'll just do whatever you guys ask me to do. I'll get in there. I'll get my hands dirty. You're like, man, that guy's gonna be awesome. 4 weeks later, they've been in the bathroom for an hour. Like they're just non-responsive. You try to give them feedback and they're just like rolling their eyes. And you're like, how did I get this so wrong? Like, that's crazy. So
Yep.
I have just removed this belief that I'm fantastic at judging
Uh-huh.
character and hiring people. And I think anybody out there who hasn't hired like 30, 40, 50 people, if you think that you're going to be great at it, like just remove that idea that you're fantastic at this. Maybe you're better than me. Maybe you're better than Jarom, but I don't know what the secret sauce is for that one. That's a really difficult problem.
I agree 100%. I had the same ego. I had the exact same ego that I could pick them out of a crowd. I knew who was going to produce and
Yep.
who wasn't, and you just can't. And the weirdest of people who are, you would think that they're going to be here in this industry for 4 months and then they're out. They're the ones that are killing it.
Yep.
And then the ones where you're like, man, they're polished. They've got it going for them. They're the ones who can't hack it, and
Yep.
they're out, and they don't survive. So that's how I know you've managed a lot of people, because you cannot pick anybody out.
Yeah.
There's
And
no way.
the opposite, definitely, to your point, is true. Sometimes I'll hire the third or fourth candidate. Like candidate 1, 2, and 3 are just like, no, actually, I moved on.
Yeah,
This isn't really the right fit for me. I'll be like, I'm on to candidate 4. You'll hire them, and you'll be like, they're amazing. You're like, oh my
yeah,
gosh, like how did I not like know that this person was going to be so great? You're almost like
yeah,
blown away. They pick it up. They're in there in 2 weeks. They're like, I don't need any more training. I'm ready to go. You're like,
yeah.
wow, this is
Those are the
fantastic.
gems.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so take me pre crash. You're doing the real estate agent side of things. You're getting some flips. Maybe they're going well. They're working, but you're building them. What happens pre 2020?
Pre 2020, we had more money that we knew what to do with. Um,
I should have
and
known
I,
you back then, man. I could have taken some off your hands.
Yeah, I mean, and I say that lightheartedly, but we were doing extremely well. Me and a couple of my partners.
With agents and flips?
Yep, agents, specifically flips. I mean, we were turning. We would make $100,000 on one home sometimes, and we would be closing a couple of those a month because buyers were paying 30, 40,000 over list price
Mhm.
back then. It was just a stupid bidding war, and it was
Yeah.
non-sustainable. And so we were taking advantage of it.
Ta
And
let's get granular. Take me through, like, that whole process, because it sounds super easy, but I'm sure there's a lot more to it. Take me through identification of properties, financing, rehabbing,
yeah,
sale process.
yeah. So identifying the property, again, it's online leads for
Really?
us. We with home investors, they provide the lead. We pay them for the lead, and we have to close that lead. And
So
our
so that lead is what? A person who just wants to sell their house, a distressed property, someone who's, like, in foreclosure? What does that look like?
you know what? Most of our people were not well, they were in like personal distress. That was most of our sales. It was kids that inherited a property, didn't know what to do with it. It was mom's rental property, and they're just like, I don't want to deal with evicting these tenants. I don't want to deal with the rehabbing. I don't want to deal with a realtor telling me I got to do these repairs to sell it on the market. I just want out.
Okay.
And so that was the majority of our clientele. And it was a nice home. Um, but just they didn't want to have to deal with the headache of, they could have made the money on their own. They could have flipped it on their own, but managing it, they didn't know the first thing on how to turn a property.
Got it.
So we give them a fair offer for their home, and we buy it, we take it over, and then we next day we're rehabbing, we're demoing, trashing out.
How are you buying the property? Buying cash?
Hard cash, but it's hard money. So we're paying 16% interest.
So you're being lent by someone who's not a bank, presumably, who's going to charge a wealthy real estate investor. Yeah.
Exactly. So, now a lot of our hard money lenders are real estate investors that we've developed a relationship with. And so they're our hard money lenders. And so they'll lend us the money to purchase the home. And then our goal is just to turn it as quick as possible, because time is money. And
Hmm.
when you're sitting on inventory and it's not moving, you're losing money. So we pick them up, we start work the next day, and we have really good subcontractors. They're people that I've met, gosh, 15 years ago when I was in the property management space.
Mm.
And so that was a lot of value that I brought to the table, was I had all the contractors, and subcontractors that could do work for really inexpensive, to get the property up to snuff to hit the market.
Yep.
And we're realtors, and so we don't charge ourselves a fee to sell the home. And so we would just be paying the buyer's agent to bring a buyer. And so we were able to save money on that aspect too. And then we would sell it and then cash out. And those paychecks were great. And had we been smart, we would have held every sixth or seventh property and just held it.
Gotcha. So if you hold a property, how are you going to pay back your hard money lender? Through profits of another deal?
We would have just refinanced it out into like a standard conventional loan. That's like 5 or 6% interest.
Got it. So the bank is going to pay off your hard money lender, and then you're going to have a 30-year mortgage.
Yep, exactly. That's what we should have done. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. We look back. That was our biggest mistake on the flips business. That was our biggest mistake.
Okay. And then you've got a handful of these running as you come to 2020.
Handful. I mean, we got 18 in the pipeline that we're actively trying to turn. And then the market dips and things get real saucy. And I mean, there were days, Alexander, where we're like, okay, well, I'm alive today. I'm surviving today. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. And that was a lot of 2022, 2023, and a decent part of 2024. We didn't know what the future held for us. We had hard money lenders breathing down our neck, asking where their money was at.
Right.
And we were in a really tough spot. And pad split, as I mentioned earlier, that concept of pad split is what saved us. At the end, it was the income that pad split was able to generate for us that saved us having to foreclose on any of these 18. Had pad split not been around, we would have foreclosed.
So when you talk about a foreclosure, you owe the money to the hard money lender?
Yeah.
So what would a foreclosure look like?
He would have foreclosed on us.
He would have just taken over possession of the home?
Yeah, hit our credit. We had personal guarantees on all of these homes, so they could have come after anything personally of ours as well. It wasn't pretty.
Okay, so what's pad split?
So pad split, it started in Atlanta, Georgia, and we came about pad split through networking with our Home Investors franchises here in Phoenix. They actually flew out to Phoenix to tell us about their product. Everybody wrote them off except us.
Here we go again.
And so seriously. And so we actually flew to Atlanta and we met with the CEO and his operations, and they took us to 8 or 10 different pad splits in Atlanta, in the suburbs of Atlanta, and just showed us the concept of you take these 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes and you chop them up into an 8-bedroom, 2-bath. So you take all living space, dining room, front room, family room, garages, anywhere and anywhere you can take that's a space to create a habitable bedroom was turned into a bedroom. And here in Phoenix, our average monthly rate per bedroom is like $900 a month, $950 a month. And 8 bedrooms, that's almost $8,000 a month in revenue. And so that was enough to pay our hard money lenders to float these properties.
Okay, so I understand, but are you getting like 8 different tenants? They all like are deciding to live together, like in a frat house?
Yeah, literally it's co-living. So it's like a frat house. You share the bathroom and you share the kitchens. And you share common space, but there's very little to no common space besides the bathroom and the kitchen, because we turn all common space into a bedroom. So it requires some capital up front for us to put up the walls,
right,
move light fixtures, fans, all that flooring, all that good stuff. But it saved us.
Interesting. No, I've never heard of this. So what kind of people are moving into these, like single guys, single gals?
The most common person that we get is like a divorced male. They're the
This is
most common. That's like our demographic for the most part. But it's also people who just need a spot to hang for 4 or 5 months. It's 30 days,
I
30
see.
day
Got
leases,
it.
so it's short term. It's considered midterm, and they don't have to pay for a bed. They don't have to pay for utilities, internet. They just bring their suitcase, their
Hmm.
bike, and then they're good. Most of these people work it. It's your tire buster at Discount Tire, or the burger flipper at McDonald's who moved here from Ohio because his grandma's here and can't afford rent. No, no, you can't afford rent here in Phoenix. Um, the deposit they charge you up front, the deposit to turn on utilities,
Good
the
point.
furniture you
Yeah.
have to buy. I mean, it's an expensive upfront cost,
Yeah.
and
I
so
mean,
Pad Split eliminates that, and it creates affordable housing
I
for
have
single
I
individuals.
have a rental, and it's not the nicest rental in the world, but monthly payment 1,600, and I had a single mother move in and $3,200 down payment. Like, boom, that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
Even
yeah,
even for me, I'm like, geez, at $3,200, that's like you're gonna have to make sure you know where that's coming from.
yep.
So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Interesting. How long do those people generally stay at that?
The average nationwide is like 9 months.
Okay, that's longer than I would have thought.
Yeah. So in our experience is when you have a new property you put to the market, you get quite a bit of turnover as people are kind of figuring out what it is because we brought it to Phoenix.
Got it.
We were the first pad split here in Phoenix. And
Mm.
so we were learning the ropes, trying to figure out does our market support this model? And so it takes some time to weed out the people who are bad eggs or who just aren't up for co-living. But once you find the people who are there for 60 days, they typically stay for another 7 to 8 months before they move out.
Yeah, what kinda issues are you seeing with tenants there? People just being way too loud, way too wild, not fit for living with 7 or 8 other people?
Yeah, we've had those complaints from, we call them members, before, but we're pretty strict on our rules. They know what our rules are. And if you don't keep our rules, one strike, you're out. We won't renew your lease and you're gone.
Mm.
So we have a pretty firm hand when it comes to stuff like that. We don't tolerate that. So I mean, we've had a few issues where one of the members was trying to fight another member, uh, and then we just recently, yesterday, we found out that one of our properties has bed bugs.
Mm.
So that's a new one for us. I mean, I dealt with it in property management all the time. Like bed bugs is normal for me from what
Yeah.
I like. I'm used to hearing bed bugs, but when you've got 8 separate people, how do you how do you displace them for X
Mm.
time to fumigate and treat the property? So we're learning that as we go. But other than that, it's just normal stuff like my seat's leaking or my light's not coming on. It's just handyman stuff. So
I
it's not too crazy.
I imagine it's a little bit harder on the house.
I mean, yeah. I mean, there's eight grown adults using the same toilet.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, the wear and tear is expedited for
But
sure.
you're making the financial bet that it's paying for that, it's covering that cost.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, we don't put any carpet in any of the bedrooms. It's all luxury vinyl plank, which is tough stuff, and it's cheap. So
Mm.
we try to make them somewhat indestructible, but there's always going to be that wear and tear we have to fix.
Are you thinking about doing this pad split in other markets? You said you brought it to Phoenix.
We
Uh,
brought it to Phoenix, and I think they're in like 8 or 9 states right now.
it's not that many.
It's not. I don't have the bandwidth personally to go out and start it in Ohio if it's not there already.
It
But at
looks
the
like
same time,
I'm doing a search right now, Columbus, Ohio,
yeah,
affordable home
yeah.
for $119.
Are so they're there?
No, no available homes match your search.
Okay. So depending on what market rents are in Ohio and what home prices are, it could work well. Is affordability a problem in your market?
Oh, yeah, I would say so. I would say we have pretty reasonable housing prices, but that is sort of quickly leaving the reasonable pricing
Okay.
neighborhood. I think So I'll give you just a sort of example. So I bought that house that I rented out now in 2017. I paid $113,000 for it. Small house, like 960 square feet. I got that reappraised maybe 3 or 4 years ago for like 200,000. Now you'd be lucky to find a house for less than 250,000 in that particular area.
Yeah.
I would say rents are reasonably 1,400, 1,500, 1,600 for
Okay.
even an apartment, let alone a home. Like, to get a full home like my tenant has, 1,600 is not cheap, but it's not by any means, like, expensive for what you're.
Yeah.
So I'd say it's starting to go. I'm seeing that they have some in Cleveland, but I don't see any in Columbus. It's interesting. Something
Okay.
about
Yeah.
real
Yeah.
estate, not my first business, so I know how you are. We're just talking about, "Oh, we're so stupid. We started all these businesses," and now my mind's running right here.
Yeah. I mean, in my head, if it breaks even for 30 years, I'm good.
Yeah.
I don't care. I'm not looking to generate passive income off of it necessarily. It's just building. It's a building block to get me to where I want to go. It's just one of the avenues of revenue that we
Mm,
have. But it was unintentional. We came across pad split out of desperation.
mm,
We have not None of our pad splits that we bought because we wanted to open a pad split.
yeah.
It was because we needed to get out of a mess. And so if we've got our pad split goggles on and we're looking for pad splits and opportunities, it's going to generate $3,000-4,000 a month in net income.
Mm. So did you have all those 17, 18 properties on that 2020, uh, changeover with Fed rates, and then you went, "Shit, we gotta do something with these," and pad split came along, and you and your wife go, "Alright, this is a Hail Mary, like,
Yep.
we gotta throw something, we might as well throw the Hail Mary here."
Yeah, we threw it, and we were able to offload a couple of those properties on the market through sales.
Got it.
But the ones that we couldn't, I think we got 8 still
Mm,
from that market that we've held on to. We still have
and they're all pad splits or
all
no?
past. One of them is a midterm rental, like traveling nurses.
Interesting.
So other than that, they're all pad splits. We don't have any long term leases.
I'm sure you looked at this, but why not Airbnb? I'm surprised I'd never heard you say Airbnb in this whole conversation.
Yeah, so I have an Airbnb up in Flagstaff, which is northern Arizona. It's gorgeous, like
Yep.
pine trees, snow. It's like that's Arizona.
Yeah,
Arizona's got
I gotta hike Humphrey Peak. It's the highest
yeah,
in Arizona. I'm doing the highest point in every state with one of my friends, so we gotta be
cool.
out that back way
Yeah, yeah,
sometime.
yeah. So you'll know Flagstaff. Airbnb does well there. Here in the valley, it's saturated.
Mm,
And in the summertime, people don't want to be here.
yeah,
And so we didn't want to, and we have to furnish it. I mean, furnishing alone is like 30, 40 grand.
right.
And so we were already putting in 10 to 15 and putting up walls and beds and everything else. We didn't want to Airbnb, and Airbnb's tough. I mean, you're in a hospitality industry now, and so you're having to give these people 5-star experiences. Where
Mm,
pad split members are just grateful they have a bed to sleep in,
mm,
and so the management of a pad split's a lot different than the management of an Airbnb.
interesting. Huh, very cool. Were there any other kooky ideas that you looked at in that time of desperation?
I mean, gosh, probably. Honestly, I try to forget a lot of what we went through, but yeah, I mean, we had contemplated about selling everything we have and just starting over. We contemplated about filing bankruptcy,
Mm,
closing on all of this, and just starting over. But we didn't want to wait the 6 or 7 years
yeah,
to be able to buy again. We didn't want to lose time, and so we just decided to keep swimming, and we swam. And I kept going back. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the story of the rats that Stanford did
oh,
about.
yeah, I am, one of my favorites.
I literally go back to that all the time, and we were given little glimpse of hope throughout this tough time in our careers, and that little glimpse of hope is just what we needed to be able to swim to tomorrow.
Yeah,
And
aren't super familiar with that study, they put rats into a tank of water essentially, and they saw how long they could swim. The first group of rats gave up at something like really short, like 15 minutes or something
Yeah.
like that, and
Yeah.
they just unfortunately passed away, I believe, is how the study goes. I like to think maybe they got saved, but I don't know if that's how
Yeah.
the
I think they died.
I unfortunately think that they died. And then they did the same experiment, but right before the rats were about to, like, give out, they reached in and pulled them up. And then they took that same group of rats and put them back in, and they swam for something like 24 hours before they gave out. And it was
It was
just
like 60 hours.
geez, they just had that glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
So they, like, 10,000 x'd the time frame.
Yeah.
And it's sort of a study in showing, well, if people have hope, they can keep on going. And I read this book by Viktor Frankl. It's a famous one, Man Searching for Meaning. And he said, I just kept holding out hope that I was going to get out of the concentration camps. And
Yeah.
he had this idea that he was going to write this book that was going to change people's lives. He's like, I'm going to get out and I'm going to write this book. And he just kept believing. And he
Yeah.
said, people that gave up hope, they didn't make it. And
Yeah.
tough
That's it.
situations, but not to compare our
Oh,
circumstances to that.
absolutely not. But that's true. That's exactly true. That story, I keep falling back on that story. And it's hope. Hope is what pushed us through and what is still pushing us through because we're not out yet. I
Mm,
mean, we're close. We're doing well again, but we still have baggage we have to let go of.
mm. Yeah, so maybe take me to pad splitting on how we get to where we are now.
Yep, pad split helped stop the bleeding and helped us at least maintain status quo. And that market messed with our heads. And
Mm,
I would still say we're still a little messed up in the head. And I was watching a video of a guy comparing the top 5 tennis players in the world to the top 25 in the
uh,
world, and the difference between the top 5 and the top 25 isn't diet. It's not exercise routine. It's not waking up early. It's not working harder. It's not who your coach is. It's the way that you think.
mm,
Your mind. Essentially, it's your mind. So like if you're playing an opponent and they score a point on you, it's not, well, crap, this sucks. I should have had that point. It's okay. Hey, nice play. Next point's mine. I love this game. Like I got this. And so it's that positive mentality has kind of been tainted for us. And so we're trying to get that back. The love for the game, we're trying to get it back. And that's where we are today. Really, is we love the game, but we have to do some mental work to get back in the saddle and to not be scared to touch a deal because we lost our shorts on the last one.
well, I'm more into stocks, I'll be candid in saying that, and this is something that my stock trading coach has said. It's that the trader who can just be as emotionless about the result, like, you don't ignore if the result went bad.
Hmm?
You don't necessarily assume that you're a genius, best in the world when it goes great, and you also don't assume that you're, like, an idiot when it goes poorly. It's like you may like, in 2020, you may have been making all of the right decisions, but circumstances just hit us. Like, how could you have possibly planned for a global pandemic?
Yeah,
So, you don't fall in love necessarily with the results, you kinda try to just be, like, stone-faced emotionalist, like, even if I just lost 30 grand on a trade, I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna keep on trading, and
yeah,
it's not easy, I'm not saying it's easy, but that's maybe just one thing to consider is just like, "Hey,
yeah.
I just gotta keep getting up and swinging the bat."
So true. And you have to, or else you're just gonna, it won't work. You'll always lose every time. And I love stocks too. And the majority of my stuff is in real estate, mainly because of depreciation.
Yep.
And the amount of money you can save on taxes and depreciation is just, it's insane. And they're talking about extending 100% bonus depreciation again.
I saw that.
That would be, I mean, that's, you just can't get that in stock. But diversify. I have stocks. I love them. They're consistent as long as you're playing the long game.
Mhm.
Um, but
Maybe just, you know, compare and contrast real estate versus the other investment,
Yeah.
opportunities that are out there? Because clearly you're all in on real estate. As stated, you like some other things. But if I was 20 years old again, I had carte blanche to invest in anything,
Yeah.
what are you doing? Why are you picking real estate? Maybe would you not pick real estate? What are the benefits?
If I knew then what I know now, it would 100% be real estate with a little bit of stock. I'm a crypto guy. I like crypto. I believe in crypto. Don't hate me.
No, I do too.
So I would diversify in that, but the majority of everything that I have would be in real estate. I'd be make sure that I was considered a real estate investment or investor or
Okay.
professional is what they call them, so I could take advantage of the depreciation. But hands down, number for number, your return because of depreciation will always outweigh stocks, in my opinion. And there's an affordability crisis. The world's growing, and there's a shortage of houses here in Phoenix,
Mhm.
and I don't see that changing anytime soon. I mean, the builders stopped building in 2006, 2007, and they have not even come close to hitting the shortage here in Arizona. So my bet's on real estate in that it's going to be short for a while longer, and I know the space really well, and I know the players in the space. So I would go all in, buy and hold, flip here and there for some money, buy and hold.
Do you just wanna touch on that benefit of depreciation? If for those
Yeah,
who are not aware of what
yeah,
that is, what that means, and how that
yeah,
benefits you.
yeah. So I'm not an accountant or CPA by any means, but I'll give you a personal example of what happened to me a couple of years ago that I've never looked back. I bought a property up in Flagstaff specifically looking to do Airbnb. It's $1 million home on an acre next to a lake. It's gorgeous. And when we bought that home, we put 15% down. But what we were able to take off of our revenue for that year as a whole, I personally saved. I went in on this house with a partner, and so my savings of my out of pocket costs to the IRS, to the government, to Uncle Sam was $140,000. Me, I didn't have to pay Uncle Sam $140,000. I had to pay them $140,000 less that year because I bought one home.
Is that taking some bonus depreciation? Okay,
All bone,
gonna
yes,
say
yeah.
because what's the
We
straight line? 129th, 127th, 130th?
For the what? I'm sorry.
For residential real estate, like, what's the depreciation timeline?
Yeah, it's like I think it's 27 years,
I think so
27 and a
too.
half years or something like that. So
I'm sure you know this, but commercial's 39, so we're like,
yes,
"Oh, come on, 39 years?"
yep, commercial's much longer, but we front loaded it all
Got it.
because we wanted to take it that year. We did well that year, so we wanted to take it all, and it saved us so much money. That's just one home.
Right. So what you're doing is you're accelerating depreciation by specifically doing some sort of a study, like a cost segregation study that tells the
Exactly.
IRS, "Look, I know you think that this glass door is gonna last 29 or 27 years, but actually it's not. It's really very short term in nature. So I'm gonna take all of that depreciation for this glass door this calendar year," which is totally legal and allowed as long as you kinda cross your T's and dot your I's.
Yep, yep. So we pay for a cost segregation to be had to make sure, like, if we ever got audited, here's our segregation report. Look at it. It's just not worth it. It's like 2 grand for them to run the report,
Yeah.
and we just my partner also saved 140 grand.
It's pretty
Uh,
good. Now,
so
the flip side of that depreciation, though, is you would have to recapture it at some point in time,
if you sell,
and you do not roll it into something different.
correct. Yep.
So
So our
is
goal is
this
just to buy and hold. So
yeah,
for us, we're not looking to sell. We're looking to build a portfolio. So for us, it works.
correct me if I'm wrong. So what that recapture means is, right, like, you bought it for $1,000,000, let's say 10 years from now, like, the market's back, it's skyrocketing, it's worth $2,000,000.
Yep.
You sell it, you've made $1,000,000 in profit, but you did have a 140,000 you personally had $140,000 in tax, deduction. You would have to recapture that 140,000 as income above and beyond that 1,000,000 and
Correct. The way that I understand it is I actually have to pay a portion of that back.
Correct. That is how
Yeah.
you have to
Yeah.
recapture that. Because
Correct.
I tried to buy a building from one of our old, landlords, great guy, his name's Cleve Igo. He's just like a good old boy, but he's got like 30, like, very large industrial buildings. He's like, "My accountants say that if I sell this, I'm gonna have to pay $600,000 in taxes, Alex. I just can't do that. I just can't do
Yeah.
that right now."
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, you made $2.4 million in profit on it, so I'm sorry that you have to pay
Yeah.
grand." But for him, he's just like, like, I'm not getting to keep any of this because he had to recapture all of the depreciation that he took.
Yep. Yep. So
So
he front loaded it as well.
so in the tax code, there's very few permanent deductions. So whenever people are like, "These millionaires and billionaires, they don't pay any taxes," I'm like, "Hold on a minute, like, I don't know how you're arriving at those numbers because the numbers that
Yeah.
is that they pay an outsized proportion. Actually, the releases this data in arrears 3 years, past, and you can actually just totally see how much the top 1% paid in taxes proportion. But most of what they're doing is they're deferring taxes out into the future, or if, like, they're doing things like capital gains, they
Hmm.
are taking a lower rate of, taxation
Yeah.
instead of full income tax.
Yep. Yep. If it's a short term hold, do not do bonus depreciation. Don't do it long term.
So what's the secret sauce is that eventually you just, like, roll it out into the future, and then you pass it down to your kids, and you try to avoid the estate tax, and there's some sort of, like, a taxation, like, drop off, I think, if you can do that?
That's a good question. I haven't gotten that far as
Alright.
far as
Well,
like my inheritance passed down to my kids. My goal is just to grow it as big as I can, and then kind of figure that out as I go, which is part of my problem. I'm a lot of times I'm reactive instead of proactive, but I should know that.
no, it's all good. What's it like having 4 kids and trying to manage a business like this? That's not a small group of kids.
No, it's not. And when the fourth one came, I was like, four is what broke me. It's when I started losing track of everybody and everything.
Mm,
Although I will say my fourth came at the darkest time in my life, and he's what he was like. We talk about the rats, right? He was the hope that I needed to keep pushing.
mm,
Coming home and hanging out with him and holding him is what I needed every day to make it to the next day. So 4 kids is a lot. It's a lot to manage. They are incredible. That is the main source of my happiness, are
mm.
my kids and my wife. Money's fun, but my family is what creates my happiness. So while that's a lot, I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, I think, most people don't think about it like this, but money is just a tool to buy back time and pay
Yeah,
for the things that you want to do.
yeah,
Like, "Oh, like, my shoulder hurts." Like, I have the money to pay for PRP or stem cells, or I can go to a specific trainer or doctor to do this. It's just gonna buy you access to things that you didn't necessarily have, previously. Like, buying a Porsche, it's like, that'd be fun, but it's not really what I personally want. It's not
yeah,
gonna make me any happier. Me being happier is having time to do the things that I wanna do. Talked about tennis, I go play tennis, I can go travel, I can do the things that I wanna do. That's what I wanna use my money for, not nice things.
yeah. I'm glad you said Porsche. Most people call it a Porsche.
Yeah,
So you know your cars.
my friend down the road who's got a car dealership, I was like, "Alright, what's the correct pronunciation?" Like, Porsche. He's like, but, most people won't make fun of you if you say Porsche, but the
Yeah.
correct
The car guys will make fun of you for sure.
that's right. I'm not in that category in class. Um, so how did you get into the hearing aid business? All the other businesses track for me. Where did
Yeah.
hearing aids come in?
Yep. Great question. That came in because the partner that we're partner, one of my partners, who's partners with me on the hearing aid company, he's really good friends with the hearing aid operator. The hearing aid operator had a partner who got into some drugs.
Mm,
Wasn't paying suppliers, wasn't paying rent, and we had 4 or 5 days before the landlord was going to shut the doors.
mm,
So we kind of went in as an angel investor and bought out his partner's share and rebuilt it, and it's doing really well. That is an incredible company, and I'm so glad that we did it. I wasn't on board to do it. We had so much other stuff going on, but my partner's like, no, we have to do this one.
Mm.
So I'm glad we did, and it's paid off, a hundredfold, because we have an incredible operator in place, an incredible COO in place that operates the day to day, so that we don't have to oversee any of that. So that's how that came to play. I know nothing about hearing aids, zero about hearing aids, but I know how to operate a business. I know how to look at a P&L. I know how
Mm.
to increase revenues and profits. And so we've just done that over time and slowly grown that business.
Well, has that taught you a lot about different industries and different sector? Because that seems so different to me from real estate, buying, hold, flipping, things like that.
Yeah, it's way different. And the medical industry, if you're a business person, there's a lot of money to
Mm.
make in the medical industry because doctors aren't business people.
Yeah.
And they're incredible physicians, but they have no business running their own business. And that's the problem. So if
Mm.
you can find a physician who is good at his craft and partner with him and help him blow it up as a business, there is a lot of opportunity in the medical space.
Mm. I can't get into any more businesses. No,
No.
it's tough, man. I've had people on from that industry. That industry is ripe, for change and ripe
Yeah.
f really redevelopment, I think, in total. I think the American healthcare system is just riddled with problems, and it's
Yeah.
gonna become so unaffordable for people, kinda like to your point, with some ways, the real estate market, that things are gonna have to be done differently. We're going to change the paradigm, and maybe it won't be crazy for you to live with 9 people. Maybe it won't be crazy for you to do very, very different methods and means
Mhm.
of seeking medical treatment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So talk to me about the Fed and the rate changes. What's life like post 2020 rate change? I imagine the real estate market is hit as hard as any other out there.
Yeah. Phoenix hits every cycle.
Hmm.
And it doesn't skip a cycle. And this cycle almost claimed our business. It almost took it. We've luckily been able to float and survive. And the Fed's raising rates hurt us and a lot of people that we know. We were also over aggressive, and we should have had a more manageable amount of inventory. But the Fed's it's been a survival, right? Rates are still high, and home prices are still high. Home prices they're still going up. There was an initial dip for 4 to 6 months, but since then, year over year, home prices are up here in Phoenix. So they're
Mm.
not continually trending down. Their appreciation and inflation is causing home prices to go up. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. I do worry about when the feds do cut rates, if they ever do what they're going to say, that there will be a little bit of a frenzy again because the demand out there is through the roof. The affordability is the problem.
Mm.
So affordable homes is like such a big deal here in Arizona, specifically Phoenix. So I anxiously await when the feds lower rates because we can move inventory quicker and we can offload inventory quicker and prices will go up faster. But they're very slow and cautious. From what I can see, they said they're going to cut rates 3 times this year. We'll be lucky if they cut them once.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a political play. I have my thoughts about how they operate, but it's tough. You just never know, and optimism will kill your business.
Mm.
And optimism has stunted our growth because here we are thinking, oh, rates will drop in a month because Fed said they're going to cut rates. Well, they don't drop. Job reports come out and it's a good report, or CPI report comes out and it's good news. Well, they're not going to drop rates. They're going to drop rates when there's a recession on the rise. And so we've bought properties we shouldn't have bought because we were optimistic about the Fed's cutting rates. So there's a tip. Optimism will kill your business. You have to operate in current market conditions.
Mm. Yeah, I have my own personal opinions about the Fed also. I don't know if you just saw that a senator introduced a bill, the Federal Reserve Board Abolition Act legislation that would dissolve the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System and the Federal Reserve Banks and repeal the 1913 Federal Reserve Act, which established the system. I told that to one of my friends, and he's like, "Well, they're gonna kill that guy." I was like, "Well, maybe, but probably not." Yeah, I'm with you. I think the Fed has entirely too much power. I had a libertarian presidential candidate on this podcast, and it's a pretty widely held belief from the
Yeah,
libertarian side of view that they have just far too much power. At the end of the day, they literally are holding the global economy in their fingertips and just saying, like, "Well, are we going to raise rates or are we not going to raise rates?" They're
yeah,
doing the crazy like pondering and pandering. Maybe, maybe three, maybe one. It's like, why are we operating our financial system in this crazy manner?
yeah,
That's a whole nother long topic, but yeah, that would be one of the reasons why real estate freaks me out is because you don't have control over those rates, and those play so much of an impact on whether or not people could buy. Just in Ohio, if you wanted to buy a $300,000 house, previously it was kind of affordable, maybe like 1,700 bucks a
sure.
month when rates were 3 to 4. Now it's like $3,400 a month, and you're like, that's like all my income. I can't pay 34 and 300 grand is not that nice of a house. I mean, it's decent,
No,
don't get me wrong, but now it's like, hey, the only way I can do that is if I, like, move in with someone else or, like, I marry a girl or marry a guy and we're
dual
both
income.
move in. Exactly, dual income,
Yeah,
and, fewer people in my generation are getting married, fewer people are getting, engaged, and they're slowing down their timeline to move in together, so it's a tricky situation across the board in the real estate world.
yeah. No, I completely agree. That's exactly correct. It's hard to predict, and when you base your decisions off of government predictions, you can't. You have to go off of current market conditions, and if it's not going to work in your current condition, don't do it. Don't bank on something happening to where it's going to be better for you.
Yeah, hope is not a strategy.
No, not in that sector. It's not.
Well, I know you're a busy man, so we'll kinda work to get you out of here, but one last question I have for you. What have you learned about managing people? I know you have 90 people under maybe not under you necessarily, but in your organization as far as real estate agents go. Give me some, things you've learned, leadership tips, best practices, and how you've managed, that enormous group of folks.
Yeah, that's a great question. I like to use the analogy of Dennis Rodman because I've been asked that question many times. And I firmly believe that Dennis Rodman's the reason they won a bunch. The Bulls won a bunch of championships. He was a key player in their success, but he was very difficult to manage.
Mm,
Um, Now, I don't necessarily agree with the culture per se that he brought, missing games and stuff like that, and being unpredictable. I don't love that, but in order to win championships, sometimes you have to be able to um, massage every individual and use their strengths as best as you can. Now, if
mm,
they're a cancer, you got to get them out. But if they're a valuable player, you have to learn how to make what makes them tick. And
mm,
if all we had was a black and white, it's this way or the highway like a corporate, we wouldn't be nearly half as successful as we are. All the people that work for us are 1099.
yep,
They're not W-2 employees. They're subcontractor real estate agents on our real estate team. And so learning how to help them see the vision and catch the vision and what could be and cater to what makes sense for them. It's individual basis. It's not a blanket management style that we offer here. It just doesn't work. So my advice would be Dennis Rodman, Michael Jordan, easier to make. Steve Kerr, and I know I'm dating myself, but those guys, yeah, manage them. But the Dennis Rodmans will also win championships, and so without a Dennis Rodman, it's going to be harder to get to where you want to go.
I was just in Mexico City, and apparently they haven't caught up to the times either because everybody's just wearing Bulls gear. And I'm like, the Bulls have been pretty bad for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So maybe
Yeah.
like let's move up to like Lakers gear, and then in 10 years they'll move up to Warriors gear and
Yeah.
figure it all out.
Yeah.
No, man, I love that. And I think you're right that certain people need to be managed in a different way. One of my former business partners, one of the construction company, we had our differences and it didn't end up working out as a partnership, but something he said will always stick with me. He goes, "I'm just not going to change myself for other people in this organization." And I'm like thinking, that's literally all management is changing yourself to deal with certain people.
Being
Like
a chameleon.
I can deal with you in a different way that I deal with Peyton than how I deal with, Marita. Like people are going to be different and need different things. There might be some people you can be really tough on, really candid with. There might be gals that walk into your office and as you start to say, I think that you need to, they just start crying and you're like, okay. So yeah, I think being able to adapt to that and not having this idea that I have one fixed way that I manage people, I think you're going to wind up really having a difficult time if that's your belief system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Jarom, where can people check you out, find you, catch up with some of your content, man? I'm super appreciative of you hanging out with us, and I've learned a ton about real estate just even in this conversation.
Yeah, Alex, thanks for having me. I'm pretty easy to find. I'm at Jarom Rogers on Instagram. And then from there, it's not hard. If you want to find me, you can definitely find me.
Sweet, brother. Well, I'll come stay in that $1 million house up in Flagstaff
Please.
when I hike the High Point.
It's waiting for you.
I appreciate you, man. I'm kidding, of course. I'll pay full price. Maybe I should check the price before I commit to that. But
yeah, we'll take care of you.
Thank you, brother. I'm super appreciative of having you on, and looking forward to seeing what you do in the next handful of years.
Hey, thanks, Alex. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. You as well.